Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel James II, the host of the Culture Connect, the podcast for the South Carolina Commission for Minority Affairs. You might ask, how did this podcast get started? Well, with a challenge from our executive director, Dr. Dolores DaCosta, we wanted to highlight the great minority voices across the state of South Carolina. You're going to hear from businessmen and women, farmers, HBCU presidents, and diverse voices across South Carolina that are doing the work every day to make our state more equitable and better for all citizens. Be sure that you subscribe and so that you don't miss the notifications for the next episode of the Culture Connect on all digital platforms. Let's tune into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Culture Connect. My name's Daniel James, host for today, and I am so excited about the guests that we have in the studio today. We have an activist, we have an educator, we have a motivational speaker, just an amazing man of the community, South Carolina native, all of that. And he is the founder of Path to Redemption, a organization that helps formerly incarcerated folks get access to housing, jobs, and all the other things that come along with being reacclimated to society. And it's a pleasure. He has a beautiful and a powerful story. So we're so excited to have him today. And we have Mr. Lester Young. Say hello to the people, Mr. Lester.
Peace and blessings to everyone. Hope everyone's doing well, and just wanted to just encourage you all to continue to stay positive in this journey that we're about to have right now.
Beautiful. Beautiful, sir. Listen, Mr. Young, I want to start with that word redemption because it's all around you. And
Mhm.
that's a powerful word to me. And I think too often we live in a culture uh, that renders so many vulnerable people, people that look like us, disposable. A lot of times, you've
Mhm.
heard, I'm sure, of cancel culture, and
Mhm.
that's a really popular thing amongst my generation. But redemption is really, from what I hear about your message and just have read, is what saved your life. It really did, that message and that hope for redemption. And I want to talk a little bit about what does that word mean to you? I want to ask that first. What does it meant to your story and to your life? Redemption.
Yeah, redemption. I think that we all redemption first. When people, hopefully, when people see that word redemption, it reminds them that we're all human beings, right? That we're
Mm,
all human beings, meaning that we all are individuals who have flaws, and we all are individuals that are going to make mistakes in life, and we're going to fall, we're going to stumble, but in spite of all of those different things, that we can recover and rebound back and become the people who we're destined to become. So when you hear the word redemption, it's really just helping, hopefully, that people would see that we are all connected to something bigger. We're connected to a human family, that people that make mistakes, as myself, I made a mistake, committing a crime at the age of 19 years old and being sentenced to life in prison. And in that situation, this is where I found my redemption. And that redemption was connecting again to the creator, but most importantly, realizing that the only way that I can rise above my circumstances was finding a path to redemption.
that's absolutely beautiful. And I think that there are parts of, I love that you connected it to all of us, because I
Mm.
think sometimes institutions, the way they're set up, especially when you talk about carceral institutions, it deems as these are the bad actors in our society, but they're no more disconnected from the human family, by way of being behind bars or not being a part of society, etc. They're just as human as we are, and we're all prone to the need for redemption. I want to talk because before we got on here, Miss Sharice told me that you just came back from Ghana. Is that
Yeah,
true? And tell
absolutely.
me what you saw. Can you just give us a quick overview?
Ghana, my trip to Ghana was it added to one of those life altering, life changing experiences on so many levels. As a black man raised in this country, and understanding that this may have been the only world that we understand, and to go back to our country, which is Africa, and to be able to tap in, to learn our culture, to see the resilience of our people, but also see the atrocity of white supremacy in
Yeah.
colonialism and capitalism, and how that country was robbed and ravished as a result of just greed of those who colonized that country. And in spite of all of that, these individuals, our ancestors, our people, still maintain a spirit of resilience. But it was another shocking contrast for me was to see the slave dungeon, right? And this is on Cape Coast and Amina, where these are dungeons where the Dutch and the Portuguese would bring our ancestors across from various parts of Africa and place them in these dungeons. And they would sit there for 3 to 4 months, enduring some of the most hellish situations, for nothing, not a crime that they committed. It's just that they were human beings. They were Black people, and they saw that their labor was needed to be in other parts of the world. And then to look at the slave dungeons and see that it resembles our prison systems, like this system that was established and built over 400 years ago. And this same dungeon structure was actually duplicated in the United States, which we now call prisons. And to see the same methodology that was used to strip our ancestors of their sense of identity, their dignity, their pride, their humanity, placing them into dungeons, where these dungeons were created to break the spirits of our ancestors. Some died in these dungeons, some survived even across the Atlantic Ocean. They survived. And then to come into America to toil and labor for this country, for the people. And then after what we call slavery was abolished in 1865, and how those who created that model in Africa, this dungeons, they started creating that very similar model inside of the United States, which is now called prisons. So to see that connection, everything that was basically done to break the human spirit in the dungeons in Cape Coast and Ghana was very similar to what was set up here in the United States and what we call prisons today. If you ever get a chance to even look at what is called some call it the castle, but our ancestors and the people of the land do not call it a castle. It calls it a dungeon because of how many people died and was tortured and harmed in that place. That's not a castle. That was a dungeon to break the spirits of the people just because they were Black people, you know? So yeah, so you get a chance, man, I encourage you and anyone who's listening to go back and just see that journey of the door of no return, but we call it the door of return, because it's like this is the area of prophecy that was mentioned, that the people of the that will place in this country that will reemerge, they will migrate back to their homeland. And this is what you have now, the return and reclaim of our ancestors, where people are now returning back to Ghana to be able to retrace the steps and understand that whole journey.
It's powerful. It's powerful. I think the meaning of home is something that is it's such a fraught concept and a fraught ideal for a lot of people, but particularly African Americans, particularly Black Americans. That idea of home. What does it mean to find one's roots, reconnect to it? And I think that sometimes, because we don't know the inception of a lot of the cruelty of some of these institutions. You talk about chattel slavery, but I mean the second form of, the chattel slavery may have ended, but the institution of slavery that still exists in the form of mass incarceration. Because we don't know those links, we often think it has to be this way because it's been this way for so long. But I think that if we can imagine a different world, a system that does not treat humans like animals, that doesn't strip them of their humanity, I think that that will mean a lot for our generation too, and the
And
people
that's
that are
why
coming.
that's why I believe that it's important that we take the time to not just read a book. It's different than reading a book and actually touching the soil. Like this is right here, I have this is soil from Africa, right? this
Wow.
is this is the soil from our land, something that most people, this is the most precious things that I brought back. but to know that this soil is a soil that many of our ancestors were yearning to return back to, but they never returned back to the land, right? And here we are now living in this country, and we see a lot of the things that are going on in this society when it comes down to white supremacy, capitalism, all of these different things that we see violence in our communities, and we see a lot of stuff going on. And we don't really fully understand it. We have
Yeah.
to really take a time to really understand that the reason why a lot of these things are going on, because we as especially black men, we've been
Yeah.
stripped of our sense of self-identity, right? We have been
Yeah.
stripped of these things. It's like you, even though like my last name, your last name, we have a connection, but it's really not our last names. It's really like, the traditions of how we were named was more of a European way versus how we originally are being given names in Africa. Like we went through a naming ceremony in Ghana, and everyone experienced that. And like in Africa, your name is, you get your first name is based upon the day that you were born, right? So I was born on a Thursday, so my name is Echo. My bloodline is Nkrumah, right? And if you're familiar with the word, the last name Nkrumah, Nkrumah is named
Mm,
after
cool.
Kwame Nkrumah,
Cool.
right? Kwame Nkrumah was one of the first presidents, prime minister that led Ghana to independence. So it's a power, like now learning that I come from this bloodline, right? The Nkrumah bloodline. So it's no accident or coincidence that I do the work that I do here in South Carolina and across the country around advocacy, around organizing, around challenging the system, because naturally that is who I am within my bloodline. So it's like some people say, well, I'm the first this, I'm the first that. You're really not the first. You just don't know who you come from. So you just assume that you're the first person, but you're really not. You're connected to a chain of people that have been doing this, and you're just part of that chain that has continued ushering this particular transformation or whatever it is that you're doing. So for a long time I wondered, like, where did I get this spirit of advocacy from? Why am I a person that see injustice and speak out about injustice? I thought it was just my brass, right? But it's really not. So when I learned that I come from that bloodline of Nkrumahs were people who are messiahs for their people. That adds a different approach and a different perspective and why I do the work that I do.
It's beautiful. It sounds like a community. It sounds like a village. It sounds like you got here by way of a village you didn't even know existed.
We all have.
We all have.
We all
And
have.
I want to get to that to talk about your community and just um, maybe some more of your roots before we get to your story.
Hmm.
Just talk a little bit about your beginnings in Hilton Head. I don't know a whole lot other than, before I read a little bit about your story, the most I knew about Hilton Head was resorts and I don't know, wealth. I didn't
This
know
is
there existed another reality on Hilton Head. So
But
please tell us.
this is the I appreciate that, and this is the thing that I remember, like, people when they hear of Hilton Head, they think about resorts, beaches, and don't
Brilliant.
understand that there's a with every place in this country, there's another community that is an invisible community. That's a Black community, that's a brown community that is living in the shadows of a resort. Like, people go to these plantations and these resorts, not realizing, brother, that Hilton Head it was one of the first places where our ancestors landed. Like, many people, like anything on like Charleston, Hilton Head, Beaufort, that Gullah, that sea coast, man, a lot of our ancestors come from that low country. So we get lost in the sauce when we go into these plantations and we sit by the pool or we play golf on these golf courses, not realizing that you're playing on some of the graveyards of your ancestors. Some of them who never made it across the Atlantic, they died in these ships, and when they got, or when they landed in here in America, which is South, some of them in South Carolina, they were buried right on the shoreline of Hilton Head Island, right? So the Gullah culture is a very powerful culture that has been lost in the sauce when it comes down to Hilton Head Resort. You don't think about the Gullah people, that these areas, which is called the South End of Hilton Head, the South End of Hilton Head was a predominantly Black community, right? But they were again pushed out into the northern part of Hilton Head, where it's more rural, more poverty, etc. So when people think of Hilton Head, some people even think Black people stay in Hilton Head. But Hilton Head was actually an island where Blacks lived and built families and communities, right? Like you go, like there are certain places like Sea Pines, Harbor Town. When we think about Harbor Town, we think about the major golf tournaments come into Hilton Head, right? But on the coast, on certain golf courses, you have graveyards of our ancestors. Because one of the things that the tradition in Hilton Head and the Gullah culture is that we buried our ancestors close to the water. So you'll always find graveyards that are very close to the shoreline, where it's pointing back that they buried them, and hopefully their spirits would travel across the Atlantic back home. So when we think about that, I think that some people, when they go to Hilton, they're like, take advantage of going to the Gullah culture tour and learn about the history of Hilton Head Island, and then you'll be able to understand the contributions that we made, and then we can see again how capitalism and just white supremacy and all of the greed push these people out of these areas. Now they're actually working in these hotels for little or nothing, where we chill out on the beach and relax, you know. But these people, our ancestors died on this land, and they now have $1 million homes. I remember like one of my family graveyards is in the middle of $2 million homes. You got a graveyard, and you got two big houses right there. Like the graveyard is right in the middle of a plot of land. So now when many of these people walk out of their houses, they're walking right in front of the graveyard of our ancestors. It's like if some of it is not respected in that capacity, you know. So yeah, Hilton Head has been, you know, growing up in Hilton Head for me was definitely, I didn't really understand it at the time, the value. And like I could literally walk to the water when I was growing up, but I never really appreciated it. Like so many people right now don't appreciate it. They've done sold their lands. They have been pushed out of their land because of taxes, not knowing that they had to pay taxes, and then go back all 30 years, and now they're pushed out of their land. And now Black people don't even own nothing, too much of nothing in Hilton Head no more, Beaufort and all these different areas.
I think that when you talked about Gullah culture,
Mhm.
I read where you were talking about having to, even with the teens that you work with or have worked with in the past, about informing them of the Gullah culture
Yeah.
as well. Talk a little bit about, well, before we talk about you giving back, I guess we
Mhm.
should go ahead and, because you've hinted at your story, but we
Mhm.
haven't really talked about your story and how you moved to present day. So
Mhm.
talk a little bit about how you ended up founding Path to Redemption. I guess that starts with your teenage years, and
Yeah.
just give a little bit about that.
Yeah, like you said, I was born and raised in Hilton Head. And 16 years old, my mother passed away. And that's where I always tell people that's when my journey began to take this wayward turn into street life, into criminality, and all of these bad things that unfortunately 19 years old, well, 17, I got arrested for possession of crack cocaine with intent to distribute cocaine into the school, selling it in school. I ended up sentencing to a juvenile sentence, which I served about a total of 90 days there. And, you know, I always tell people the reason why I'm passionate about the Department of Juvenile Justice and working with young people, because I felt like that was a very critical moment of my life, and none of the correctional officers saw me. They did never, no one never asked the question, Mr. Young, what happened? Like my mother died in March. By September, I was arrested and facing 25 years. Right. So I always say that we believe that when a person commit a crime, that we should send them to prison and never ask what happened. And that's the thing that right now, the reason why I'm so passionate about working with young people is for that same purpose, like helping the correction facilities understand that when a person, you see a person standing before you for committing a crime, we have to like look at that differently. Stop looking at the crime and find out what was the backstory behind the crime. If someone would have realized that I was just acting out at 16 years old, my mother dying, and me never processing that pain, I could have changed my life. I could have found a different path, but no one ever asked that question. So 3 months, 30, a year, 18 months later, I ended up being sentenced to life in prison for murder. And in that process, this is where I found my path to redemption, sitting in prison for life at the age of 19 years old, thinking about what this journey is going to be like. And not only that, but realizing that someone died, and I was the result. It died as a result of my poor decision making, and I had to live with that. And it was very scary to be sitting in a prison cell and realizing that the person you killed is going to be there with you. No one ever told me that. The music I listened to, the peers that I had, no one really told me that you live with the spirit of the person that you killed in prison. And the only way that you can find a sense of peace in that is that you have to begin this matter of atonement and the seeking of an apology for it. So this is where my journey began. Me humbly seeking out God and asking God to forgive me. And I remember one night in this process, I felt like God informed me, like God spoke to me. It's like, I have forgiven you, but you have to ask the forgiveness of the victim, the person that you killed. And for about 2 years, I did everything I could to avoid that conversation with that person's spirit. But this one particular night, which was on a Friday night inside my prison cell, I took on that responsibility. I embraced it. And I began to communicate and speak to the spirit of my victim, which his name is Gary Goldinger Jr. And I humbly asked him, I remember begging him for forgiveness and making a promise to him that if he forgive me, that I will commit my life to transformation and redemption, and I will no longer make the decisions that I made before that led me to my incarceration, but I would use our experience, meaning me and his spirit is forever connected in this world and even in the next life. That how could I use his story, my story, to be able to empower other people to make powerful, different choices that would not lead to the harm of someone else. So that's where I began my journey.
Wow. I tell you, that's a powerful encounter. I tell you, when I think about your story, it's almost like it's a, it's a. I want to use this example. It's almost like a Saul Paul. It's almost like a Christ-like transformation in many regards. Like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
to
yeah. I
that.
never thought about that. I
It's
never thought
very,
about that, but yeah.
it's very. I mean, it's very just drastic, and I think. But the truth is, the real you was in there the whole time. I think that what people don't realize is that trauma induced violence, in particular in our communities, like too often it is normalized. You are right about that. It is very normalized, and we don't imagine the impact that that has on people
Mhm,
because we have corrective facilities and not rehabilitative facilities. There's often not any care about that in the world.
mhm,
There's not a care about home life. There's not a care about background. None of that. So I thank you for taking on the responsibility of finding out people's why, and then also being sure that you reach people that are on a path
mhm,
of doing something wrong and trying to turn them, in not even just the right path. The right path is the true purpose they have for their life, the true calling that they have for their life.
mhm,
So I thank you for that. And I would say truly redemption, you redeem your time because some people didn't do in those 22 years that you were incarcerated, some people have not done
mhm.
in the last, in the last 40, you really
Yeah.
have like, so since then, now being out since like 2013,
Mhm.
what has that journey been like? Yeah.
It's been a journey of redemption, path to redemption. As I said, the word path, well, the word path to redemption was given to me by God. I truly believe in prison. I didn't just like, oh, I like this. It was my path to redemption was like once I had that encounter with my uh, victim, Gary Goldinger Jr., inside that prison cell. It's like God showed me that you now are on a path to redemption, meaning that you're on this journey of healing, discovering, inspiring, and motivating others towards a different journey.
Mm,
So for about 18 years prior to me even being released from prison, my time, my energy, my resources inside of prison was committed to self-empowerment, but also using everything I learned to become an educator, an instructor, to helping other men find their own path to redemption. So walking out of prison, that vision was very clear in what I was going to do when I got out of prison. It was not to now abandon everything that I learned in prison to come out in the community and make a difference. I came out of prison with the vision to continue to walk upon this path to redemption. So shortly after getting out of prison, I remember like my first week out of prison, I went to the Department of Juvenile Justice and asked them, hey, could I volunteer to become a volunteer to help young people because of my experiences I mentioned to you earlier. And they was like, they wasn't receptive to that because I just walked out of prison 22 years. They was like, I don't think we can take you on. We just gotta have to wait for a minute. Let me see if you can prove yourself that you have a different person, which I did. But I started like doing these outreaches in the community here in Columbia, South Carolina, because I moved to Columbia when I got out of prison. So I started like hosting workshops in the community library, like Save Your Youth from Incarceration, Keys to Success After Incarceration. I started automatically doing these things, not waiting on anyone to give me an opportunity to give me a table to sit at. I chose to create my own table. And a lot of people looked at me like I was crazy. Who are you and why you have this thing about Save Our Youth from Incarceration? No one showed up a lot of times. No one showed up at these workshops I will host at the library in West Columbia, but it didn't discourage me because again, I knew that I was on a divine path. I knew that I had divine calling on my life, and I just kept going at it. I remember sending DVDs back into the prison showing individual like this is the journey of this is the challenges you're going to face after incarceration. I use my experiences in life to become a teaching tool for other people. So now I've been out of here 8 years, and that's all I've been doing is using everything that I've encountered to be a teaching tool to someone else. From what we know for now here in Columbia is that the ban the box was one of a really big issue employment opportunities when I got out of prison. I got out of prison, people it tried to exploit me based upon my felony convictions. Like, oh, you got a crime, nobody gonna hire you, so we'll pay you under the table, bare minimum wages. I remember working for someone where they was paying me $50 a day, and I was working 10 hours on this particular job, which $50 a day totaled less than $5 an hour. And this was the type of exploitation that people encounter when they walk out of prison with a felony conviction when companies don't hire them. You know what I'm saying? So that was a lot, man. But in that I began to advocate for myself. Like, yo, we got the city of Columbia, Irmo, Orangeburg, all these different counties that have these. The municipalities are set up in a way where they provide jobs. The city of Columbia provide jobs for hundreds of people. And you will see like on I-26 or I-77, you'll see individuals who are currently in prison working, picking up litter on the side of the streets, right? But when they get out of prison, this is city work, working for the city, doing this type of work. But when they get out of prison, they can't work for them. So I was like, man, this is not right. You find like even the state house, you'll find guys with prison uniforms at the state house doing landscape work, doing plumbing, doing HVAC. When they get out of the prison, they can't work for them. So I was like, yo, we got to do something about that. And this is where we started advocating for ban the box, getting an ordinance passed with the city of Columbia, which was the first city in the state of South Carolina that passed the ordinance, which allowed people with a felony conviction to get employed. And that was huge for me because I know how it felt to get out of prison and only making $50 a day. And you're running, because I have a degree in business management. This person said, well, you got this degree, I'll give you this job. And I was making $50 a day at 41 years old, like, bruh, you know what I'm saying?
God.
Yeah, so that's just the type of the exploitation that people experience when they get out of prison because people feel that, oh, I'm giving you a chance, so I treat you a certain way. You know what I mean? But that's why now I'm an advocate. I believe that we have to knock these doors down. We have to rebuild these doors and these tables, that giving people with a felony conviction opportunity for a real second chance after their incarceration, or even never been incarcerated but have a felony conviction.
It's powerful. And let me tell you something. I think what it demonstrates for me is that things like that, the conditions and the circumstances that people like you and others have faced after being incarcerated, they don't have to exist. But I am aware just because I know South Carolina, I know the states, I know the US, I know America, like
Mm-hmm.
hatred, like you said, white supremacy. I mean, it really drives a lot of this because I think things could change, things can change. But too often, if we don't speak up, nobody will. I just think it really just goes to show that we have a long way to go. Tell
Mm-hmm.
me about, because when I think about your story, I know civic death is real. People often talk about the death penalty, but they don't talk about people who serve, lifelong sentences, or
Yeah.
22 years or a long time. And then after that, like you said, jobs is one facet of it. What
Mm-hmm.
about the social aspect of it? Family.
Yeah.
How did after 22 years, because well, from what I understand, you have a beautiful family now.
Mhm.
But how did it, how did that go about in terms of reconnecting with family, after that
That's
long?
like I said earlier, bro, man. It's like the prison system has never been set up to rehabilitate.
Yeah.
It's slavery with another name, and until we understand that and see that connection, we will never be able to get. Just like slavery was set up to pull families apart, to disconnect, to all of these things. Prison does the same thing, bro.
Yeah.
It's a connection. It's another form. Prison is just another name of another form of slavery. So when for me sitting in prison for 22 years and 5 months, walking out of prison and didn't even, if it wasn't for having a loving family that supported me, man, I don't know where I would have been when I walked out of prison. Like counseling and understanding the process of post-traumatic stress disorder after incarceration, it's real.
Yeah.
It's real. You living in a hostile environment, a controlled environment for whatever amount of years, and to walk out of prison, and the institution don't even have counseling in place, therapy in place to help you process your reentry challenges. Like for me, it was like I said, knowing who I am now and knowing my bloodline, that I come from a bloodline of messiahs, that this emboldens me even more now, right? So I knew that when I walked out of prison that I had to change that.
Mm.
I have to change this whole structure of how we reintegrate people back into society. It's more than just a job. When you place a man or woman who's been in prison for whatever period of time and place them in a job and don't help them process the trauma of incarceration, process the trauma prior to incarceration, the chances are this person will actually sabotage this opportunity. They will run from this opportunity and they will revert back to an old behavior because that's comfortable to them. We're not having these conversations around mental health after incarceration. So now a person go into a family, back into their family life, and they're excited about coming home. You see it all the time. But you will see 6 months later, that excitement, that person now struggle with depression, suicidal thoughts that they're not even verbalizing because no one has created a space for them to talk about it. Families don't know how to receive that after that weekend celebration of a party, took them shopping, bought them all of this. Guess what happens? Now they starting to see certain behaviors taking place in this person because the family don't understand trauma. Family don't understand post-traumatic stress disorder after
Mm.
incarceration. Now what
What's that?
happens? What is it?
What's that?
So now
Yeah.
this person has passed the blunt, passed some alcohol. Now they start finding ways to numb that pain. If we're talking about really creating a safer society for those who are transitioning out of prison, is that we have to start implementing true therapy and counseling for those way before they walk out of prison.
Yeah.
If not, as I said, I advocate now, brother. Like black men, it's okay to say I'm hurting. Black man, it's okay to say that I am in the process of healing. Because when a black man heals, you have a stronger family, you have a stronger community, you have a stronger society. But when black men who are coming from street life, prison life, poverty, fatherless home, abuse, abandonment, neglect, we're continuing this cycle of an unhealthy family, a destructive community, and our society is not safe because we're not healed. So we have to become advocates for black men like us. We have to heal from our own traumas, that so that we can be able to raise a stronger generation of black boys, black girls, so that we can go into this world, man, and continue to transform the society. Because part of who we are within our DNA is black people. We come from greatness.
That's
We
right.
have greatness in our genes. We see it everywhere. Our cultures everywhere. But we have to heal as black people. We have to heal from all of this trauma that we're continuously passing on from one generation to the next generation. When we heal as black people, man, we become a formidable force.
I believe that. I really do believe that. And it's funny you mentioned healing. It's ironic, or it is just. fortunate that you mentioned that at the end because I was going to ask you about healing and
Mhm.
therapy and that, what that process has looked like. I know that your faith has been critical in that, but also education as
Yeah.
well alongside that. You can talk a little bit about that, but I want to ask you because you've been talking. I guess we've been talking, about these things. People are
Mhm.
listening. There's a third audience, lol.
Get it?
But I
Get
want to ask you to say something to a young man, or particularly since we were talking about black men, and if people
it.
don't know, when the Commission for Minority Affairs first started, that's what it was addressing. It was addressing the circumstances of poverty and the plight, particularly of African American men at the
Mhm.
inception. So I want, maybe if there's some young man that's maybe 18, 19, that's on a path that's not the path they've been called to. It doesn't even have to be criminality, but it
Mhm.
can be any path other than what the path is they should be going on for their life. What advice would you give them? What would you tell them? You know,
Could I flip that question? Could I flip it a
sure.
little?
Come on.
Um,
Go ahead.
like I would first speak to those who are in power and influence, and then I'll
Let's
speak to
go. That's
right.
good. That's good.
I would say that for those who are in power and have influence, I think that we have to create a village of a holistic healing. We have to like create this village where it's rooted in a holistic traditional healing for black men.
Mhm.
You asked the question, what could I tell an 18-year-old? I can say stay out of trouble, but where could I point them to? I'm not, we don't have anything here in South Carolina that is focused holistically on helping individuals process their trauma. We don't have any restorative transformational circles in our community where black men could go and be able to engage in the traditional way of resolving conflict. So that's what I said. I wanted to flip that, is that I would challenge those who have power and influence in economic build, not have the financial wit, to let's create institutions that focus on this. Let's create an institution where instead of sending our 13, 14-year-old young kids to a juvenile facility where they continue to be criminalized, let's create an institution where we help these young people process their trauma, help them begin to heal, help them to be able to identify who they are as black people, where they really come from, that a gun, violence, gangs, this is not who we are, right? That's what I would say. So once we have that institution set up, then I would be able to speak to an 18-year-old person, say, hey man, once you go down here to the Commission of Minority Affairs office, they have the funds, they have a retreat that you can sign up for and be go to this retreat for a couple of weekends out of the month to begin your process of healing and being able to help you reshape your self identity so that you can be the man that you need to be in the way that you've been created to be. But we don't have that, my brother. We don't have it. We have, when we see our young people on that path of destruction, the only way that we find to resolve that is send them to a juvenile facility. And I don't think that any young person, 13, 14 years old, or even an adult, should be placed in these systems where it constantly criminalize them and don't help them process their healing. So that's why I just said I wanted to shift that.
It's the truth. Listen, it's the truth. And I think, listen, you teaching me, you teaching us in this moment, because I think we are, what you gave was a real answer, a real response, not a hopeful response, but a real one, because
Mhm.
there isn't a lot of redress. There's not a place that's safe for this, what you call restorative type of justice or restorative healing to
Mhm.
happen. And it's interesting. People really don't know about the infrastructure of correction, or the state of corrections in South Carolina, but man, this state has had a lot to happen. And we're, when I think about the, I can't even remember his name, but the 14-year-old black boy who was
Mhm.
executed in our
Yeah.
state's capital,
Mhm.
back in 1944, I believe it is. I
Yeah.
mean, we have some a deeply rooted problem when it comes to correction, when it comes to just the way that we treat black and brown bodies. So it is very true.
Yeah, I just think that if we create that system, brother, like I think that when we talking about reimagining what our communities can look like, we have to like break out of we got to break out of the norm that we have, how we have been seeing our communities. And going back again to one of the questions earlier that you asked about Ghana, you know, going back to Ghana for me again, it just shifted that whole paradigm. Like going into a community and seeing that a community operates in a way where no one feels threatened. I remember we had a dialogue in Ghana in one of the circles, and I realized that man, I was sick. I realized that living in this country for so long, I'm sick mentally when it comes in how I see you as a black man. Just like me and you having a conversation right now, or how you may see me. If we were in a different format, if I walk up to you, you walk up to me, your body may automatically tense up because you don't know what's going to possibly happen. Like if I walk with a certain way in a certain posture, your body will automatically tense up because of how you have been taught, how we have perceived another black man walking up to you. And in Ghana, I realized that man, another black man walked up to me in Ghana. Here it is, I'm in Ghana, and my hand started like I started getting tensed up automatically because how we are trained in tradition, and we just know that most black men, when they walk up close to you and they come in your space, they violate you, and you got to stand your ground. You gotta set that off. We sick, bro. We as a nation, as a group of people in our communities living, we are sick when it comes down to how do we interact with one another. I should never see you, brother, as a threat. You should never see me as a threat. Your body should be calm and relaxed and feel flow and what's up, brother. Now, when I walk by, you be like, what's going on, bro? You automatically say, damn, what's about to happen there? That just show how we have to go back again to creating this village, bro. That we have to create a village where we now focus more on healing. That we have to stop helping change this sick mindset where I see another black man as my enemy. I see him as somebody that I have to annihilate. I have to harm. I should not want to harm you just because you're a black man. We have more black on black crime in our communities than anything else. But when we see a police harm another black person, we all in outrage. But we're not in outrage when we see another black man harm another black man. It has become the norm. This is dysfunctional. It's sick that we now see that it's okay to harm each other. To me, it hurts. You feel me? So that's what I just believe that we have to like create a better system in place, man. We have to reimagine how to create a space where black men feel comfortable around black men and don't feel threatened.
I want to ask you, when you say we as communities have not cared when it comes to what you call black on black crime, I guess that's proximity crime.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you thinking about? I guess.
I'm thinking
Do you
about
mean
like
the whole collective, or?
I think that well, if this, yeah, in some ways, because the way it's projected, it's like
Mhm.
we don't have enough outrage. What I see in my proximity, it's not enough outrage that is going on with black on black crime. We don't see I don't see the protests. I don't see the advocacy around that. I don't see where we're building institutions to resolve that. I don't see us going into a community where someone just got killed and we have went in as a collective with therapists, counselors, restorative justice circles to begin to help repair the damage that has happened. I don't see that. I don't see where we 2 weeks, 2 days pass, that black man who lost his life, we move on to the next issue.
Mhm. I mean, that is very true. I think that there's a lot of intercultural healing that needs to go on. Not just, at the height of the pandemic, I remember this. Oh, you scroll down Facebook and you would just see whole groups of um, people that were white bowing before black people, saying sorry and forgiveness, all of this kumbaya. And I think it's beautiful, it's beautifully performative, but it lacks the power of real change that we really deserve and seek. But I think that we have to be healed within our own community. I agree with you. I just don't I don't want people to forget that populations, that violence that's intracommunal, that does happen. It's not right. It happens. But there's something distinct about, I think, state sanctioned violence, in
Mm-hmm.
particular a more powerful, historically more powerful racial group inflicting harm on vulnerable minorities. And I guess I just don't want people to confuse that. So that's why I asked what
So,
you meant. And I think what you said was right and it was powerful. So that is true. That is true.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with that. And when I come down to my work around advocacy now is really just the power, challenging our community leaders, religious leaders, to let's
Yep.
reimagine what healing will look like in our community.
It's very
Like
true.
this is my journey now. My path to redemption is how do we create more of a holistic healing process in our communities?
Mhm.
Like this is the state of emergency where I see we're right here in Columbia, South Carolina, right now. Every time you turn on the news, there's been another crime. Every day, violence, gun violence, gun violence, gun violence. And we see that those who are in powers believe that the best way to solve the problem is to pass more laws, put more police in the communities, do X, Y, Z. And I can understand that, right? I don't want to say something that is going to offend somebody, but I'm gonna like try my best to put this in words where I think that we have to understand that those who are in these positions that are saying that we need policing, we need more, we need all this, they don't understand our culture. But I mean, understanding our culture, that's not going to solve a problem in our culture. We as a collective body of people have to create this holistic, transformational counseling, religion. We have to create this. We've been doing this for the last 30 years here in Columbia around creating all of these laws and policies to stop the gun violence in our community amongst young people. But not once have we went in these communities and started establishing holistic transformation, restorative justice circles. We now have not once went in and created free counseling for family members who have witnessed the murder of a loved one, or even the community who saw it, who walk out when young kids walk out of their homes, they see the yellow tape and the chalk lines where someone just died. We never think about going in and set up a counselor in that apartment complex where these family members can go in at any time and begin to talk about this stuff. Because if we don't, it starts passing on from generation to generations. Where these same people who witness murder, guess what? You know how they're growing up and believing? They're believing this, that I'd rather get caught with a gun than without a gun because no one else is going to protect me. So that's what I just think that we have to look at that, man. And that's my mission right now is to challenge our community leaders to let's start creating more of a holistic approach. Let's start trying to pass these political policies that are not doing anything. They're hollow words, in my opinion. They're hollow words that are not transforming community. We're getting a lot of money in this state to protect, but it's just something simple. We just gotta have to focus on the more holistic, traditional approach and how we heal as a body of people, and
Yes,
we'll
sir.
begin to see transformation in our communities.
Mhm. Yes, sir. Now, I want to ask you what role in creating this, and this is sort of to wrap it up, really, because we
Okay,
covered to the end of our time. But
that's all.
what role would your organization, I guess, play in that? And because you said something powerful in a interview one time, I believe you said that those with essentially it was to the effect of those with the most knowledge of said problem are
Mhm.
often like the least have the least
Yeah,
access to
those
the
closest to the
yeah, come
problem,
on.
those closest to the problem have the solution, but in
There we go.
most cases are further away from the power and the resources to bring about change.
There we go.
Right?
So yeah, right. So I guess I would ask then, what resources, I guess, or what places, what place would your organization play in these conversations or restorative justice circles? And then whose ear, I guess, in terms of those in power, do you need? Or do you already have them and it's just a matter of
Yeah.
action, them
It's
acting on it?
it's providing the funds for us, like
Yeah.
providing the financial funds to create the space that we're talking about.
Hmm.
Creating safe communities, creating safe space in these communities where young people can go and begin to have realistic conversations about healing, making that available to them. That's, I think that would be the biggest thing right now, is that we see a lot of funds allocated to a lot of organizations here across the country, across the state, right? And these, some of these organizations not in the community. Some of these organizations are really not in the community at all. They're not even from our community. They got all of the money. But you got organizations that are right there in the community. You got mom and pops, really, because they're closest to the problem. They have the solutions, and they're applying these solutions to the problem, but they don't have the money to continue to carry it out. So me is like, again, lifting my voice to say, start providing financial support for these organizations so that we can create these type of holistic training that we know help our people.
Hmm.
Not a policy, not more policing, not more
Yeah.
guns, not buybacking guns. Like, let's put more counselors in these apartment complexes. Let's put more counselors there. Let's have 24 hours counselings in these communities, especially when these communities have experienced another violent crime that has taken place. Let's have counselors there. That's someone tell you, say you got to come to the city when you struggling to get transportation to go to work. Let's put these people there and make it accessible to our community so that we can begin this journey of healing.
I would love to see it. I look forward to seeing this day. And I tell you, we've been able to do a lot of just in this conversation. Like I can tell that you have a radical, a radical, a radical dream of freedom, and I think just a great I'm praying and a great vision too,
Mhm.
for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
So tell us anything else. Close us out with any thoughts or just anything that you have on your heart that you want to share with the people.
Oh, thanks, bro. I would just say that I would just encourage our whole community to wake up from the dream that we, not only say wake up, but I would just say let's continue to push our ability to reimagine what a safe community looks like. Like, let's push our imagination to think about all of the things that we can reimagine and how we create a more safer community, a safer society, in a place where we as people who have experienced so much harm in our communities, how could we create a place of healing for our community? And knowing that it is possible. We look around the world, we see various nations of people practicing some of these same things that we're talking about. Like, when I going back again to my experience in Ghana, I didn't see one police in these communities, bro. I didn't see one police. And I close with this. We did this test while I was in Ghana. I had like 1,000 CDs. It's a big wob of money, and I dropped it in some of the most impoverished communities in Ghana. Right? You know about it. I walked less than 20 feet away from that money I dropped in these neighborhoods, and people were literally walking back up to me, stuffing the money in my pocket. Like, sir, you dropped this. Then another one of my colleagues did the same thing, and people were literally pushing the money back. 1,000 CDs in Ghana meant that that person will be able to live for 1 year, for as food, housing, everything. But they didn't see it as that. They saw themselves a part of a community, and they wanted to make sure that I got the money, even though they were struggling. Would that have happened in America? No, it wouldn't have happened in America. I drop $1,000 in certain communities, man. People are literally going to take that money and run from it because of their circumstances. So I want us to really focus on, let's, how do we create that village, that type of environment where we're focusing on human dignity, healing, and restorative justice and transformation in our community. That I no longer see another Black man or a Black woman as a threat. I see them a part of the human family, and I support them, and I love them tradition unconditional. I love them for who they are, not as an enemy. I don't see them as an enemy.
Thank you, Mr. Lester. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Young,
No
just
worries.
for coming and talking to us today. And Listen, how can people stay in contact, I guess, with the work that you're doing?
You can follow me on Facebook, Lester Young. You can
Mhm.
follow me on LinkedIn, Lester Young. On Instagram, you can follow me Path to Redemption 515, or you can go to my email, my website, path the number two redemption.org, and you can connect with me there as well.
It's very good. Listen, y'all, it's been another episode of the Culture Connect with none other than Mr. Lester Young. All right. Thank you, family. Did you enjoy the episode? I hope you did. Be sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and connect with us on all digital platforms so you don't miss the next episode of the Culture Connect. We'll see you next time, everybody.
At the South Carolina Commission for Minority Affairs, we believe the state's rich culture and history lies in the diversity of its people. Through research and relationships, cultural awareness, and increased opportunities, we're working to help all ethnic minorities achieve economic prosperity. Our network of community and state partners enables us to achieve more, which helps our communities to be stronger together. To learn how we serve you, visit cma.sc.gov.